Yeah. Yeah. No, no. I had a client today who told me she's been in a lot of trouble because she's posting all sorts of nasty things on TikTok about her baby daddy. And, a minute and a half. That's someone was talking, I think it was Gilbert guy. I heard him talking about there's some new app or something in China, not here yet, but it gives romance stories in like a minute and a half. That's all these little clips. And it's kind of like the modern thing of like soap operas for women because it's in China. So it has a little bit of, sex and romance. Be daddy. And it has all sorts of people's faces in it. And then what's the third thing? So he's just talking about the things if you want to get people. That's someone was talking, I think it was, yeah, you if you pay attention, to the things they're learning that what works for an app. Well, you have to have, but it gives romance. Yeah. And you want to have sex and romance in there somehow because that attracts everybody. What was the third one? I can't remember. I don't know whether it was music or whatever, but there were three things that are what you want. And if you don't have, thank you. Yeah. Oh, and quick. A minute and a half has to be brief. That's the other thing. People don't understand. So that's the genius. So I think everything that I've ever posted on Facebook, it's all just words. Ain't nobody interested, right? If I put my face on it, would drive people away. Yeah, yeah, she told me this time. So I have to tell you, so I got to court half an hour early. Well, I got to court half an hour early. This is unusual, but just sort of worked out. And and um, and the deputy comes out and says, "Judge would like to see you now," but there's another case going on. Anyway, I went in, and the judge gave me this um, Child Protective Services report uh, for my case because you can read these things, but you can't keep them. You can't show them to the client. So let me read it while the other case is going on. Thank you, Judge. Anyway, so I read that, and then I went out, and it was time for with my client. And I texted her, "Where are you?" And she says, "I'm on the fifth floor. I'm here." And I said, "Well, judge is on the third floor. Come on down." And I said, "Why don't you walk by the deputies uh, desk so I'll see you. I'll know it's you because I haven't met her yet. Yeah. And she said, "I'm being escorted by the police." And so that was the other thing. Sorry. So I went in there with the judge first before I met the client, met the judge. And then another lawyer, I didn't know was a lawyer, another woman, like the age and kind of ethnicity and everything of what I imagine my client to be, came in and sat down. And so I said, "Are you such and such?" And she just went, "Oh, God, are you her attorney?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Come on, I want to talk to you." So he had been involved in the 4-day trial last October with this. And so she said, "Prayers and kisses." so, so, so then I'm waiting for, so I'm saying, "Oh," and I had already talked to her on the phone, so I knew she was kind of a handful, but I'm waiting. And she said, "Yeah, I'm coming with a police escort." So inside the courthouse, what do you have to do? You're starting your first day of your appearance, right? And the police already know this one needs a police escort. No, she was on high heels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just this wild case. They can't find the father. He's got a confidential address, and it's just you know. So what I'm saying is that this. Thank you. This is samsara. This is samsara. We're all looking for perfection in it. And it's like, looking for love in all the wrong places. You're not going to find it. Yeah. Oh,
eventually, through those ethical and moral behaviors, and like we should eventually, naturally unfold into perfection.
That's the accumulation of merit. Yeah. 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 Two ways, well, three, it depends how you count, of coming to enlightenment. That's why the teachings are so helpful. Because instead of banging around, trying to figure it all out yourself, I mean, that's good, that questioning thing, that's all good. But, for whatever reason, people who have a connection to the Dharma, meaning that they have some sort of confidence in it, or even a heavy doubt, but not a nasty, skeptical, ego-based doubt. I'm just going to push this down because it's threatening me, rather than open-hearted doubt. It's so fortunate because you've bumped into concepts that work. And they work not just in our culture, but in all these wildly different cultures. I mean, India and China, I mean, what was India 2,500 years ago? I mean, the cultural accretions now, and yet it worked. It works. So this is just like so completely fortunate. But there has to be that faith. That's the hard thing for people, is the faith and confidence. How do you have confidence in what the Buddha said? Because all our stuff comes up. Well, this is just political. These guys just manipulated it so they could get money.
So like, oh gosh, I can actually use my
Yeah.
my mental capacity now to apply this stuff instead of having to figure it out myself.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to spin the wheel, so to speak. We have to walk the path. And that's the real challenge, if you think about it.
Better than the teachers before them that stop people from opening up and using what has worked.
Sure, absolutely. The need, especially Americans, we all want it to be new, right? Like on TV, hey, new. Every time the cereal boxes, they're always putting new on it, every 6 months. And that works, it's like, why? Because I'm miserable now, and new, maybe a chance. It's playing samsara over and over and over again.
So is there somebody who's making those cereal boxes really happy?
They're all trying for happiness, every single one, but nobody knows the causes by which happiness is gained. And of course, one of the difficulties is that Akashic, that Alaya Vijnana storehouse of potentialities, seeds in the mind. We don't see it, so we are unconscious of it. That's why faith is necessary in the sense of confidence, but it's not a blind faith, it's not a stupid faith, and you're testing it as you're going. But that's the difficulty, because people can't see more than one lifetime. I can't remember. I think of the 8 levels of absorption, dhyana. I think it's only at the 4th level that you can actually be confident, like in seeing previous lifetimes. I mean, things like that can bubble through, even though one's not at that level.
I also have that's the weird, maybe it's all made up, but it seems like that would be logical even if you study secular scientism. It seems like things have changed. That there would be endless before.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, all the world's religions believe in more than one lifetime. Right. But the Christians believe in 2 lifetimes. So, I mean, why I can be 2? Why not 2,000? To me, I mean, it's like, it's just a crystallization of the view. That's the thing. It all comes from mind. And what we don't have confidence in is that mind has produced this. Because our modern bias completely is that all this stuff has produced mind. And we think the proof of that is that we've covered the world in asphalt. We've got more powerful drugs than ever. Look, I'm going to Mars. I mean, all these things. And meanwhile, the sadness really of hearing like very brilliant people, but there's no realization that comes with that. They're just playing with concepts. And I mean, all those things are kind of like emanations of Buddha mind, nothing wrong with it, but it's the attachment,
make other people's lives better, not your own. Really, it's not going to work. Ultimately, you gotta have the voting ticket in there. You have to have the. You gotta stop worrying about, I guess, the outcome of you simply, and then if you start.
Yeah, no, bodhicitta, you're right. Bodhicitta is the cause. Bodhicitta is the cause. And, we see, but then by applying it, at least first you know about it. And then when you look at your own mind, you say, damn, I'm not doing bodhicitta at all. Well, what's in this for me? We're so hardwired. And so then you start to see the real fundamental problem. And when you start seeing the fundamental problem, you naturally have, because there's a little degree of wisdom there, right? You're seeing how things actually are, not just filtered through the ego. And so when you do that you're thinking mind, you start to see a little bit of wisdom. What naturally comes from that is compassion, real compassion, not phony compassion, not emotional, just feelings, but you see that person's in the same freaking situation that you are. And so therefore, instead of this absolute gap between that guy's a threat, or maybe I can love it, but it's actually completely apart. Instead, there's some degree of we're in this together. And that's real compassion. But slow. And so the amazing thing of it is that, like these books, this Tibetan tradition of mental development. I'm trying to think when I first read it, I had probably been, considering myself Buddhist for 20 years, seriously, and working on it, meditating, thinking about it, directing your life. So, for the Tibetans, this is sort of what they get out of the box, but they have all that confidence already. They have kind of an ignorant confidence. I don't mean to say it ignorance with a capital I, but I just mean unexamined confidence. That's what I'm saying, because their culture helps them in that way. It can go in the wrong ways too. Yeah, right. Right. Well, I get such a kick out of these, it's usually partisan things that are doing it, but people will find some clip of some politician saying something like 5 years ago, and it's 180 degrees different what he's saying now. So, if you're trying to find happiness in that complete topsy-turvy world, you're always going to be upset. And you come to something like sensible, like the Dharma, and like people have all these problems, but I understand. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, that's my phone. I somehow turned off the ringing on my phone, and I didn't do it. It just happened. Yeah, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did it, but it wasn't ringing. So people call me, and I didn't even know it, until I see that they had called. And I have some clients that call from the jail, and you have to catch it because you can't call them back. So I was missing this guy for days. And so I was banging around trying to figure out how can I make it ring. I didn't, but at least it buzzes now. Yes. All right. Thank you. Wait, wait a minute. I have to do one thing here. Forgive me.
I got the job of class.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
1840s, brother was completely hammered off.
Yeah. It sounds nice. Right. I know it's just kind of funny though, because, I mean, you see so much of the world seems so deeply unhappy and really enraged in all this stuff. And yet, if you look at the wealth that's been created, we don't see that perspective, but I just keep thinking, my father was born in a kitchen table in Nutley, New Jersey. Isn't that something? Within view of New York. And the pictures, the pictures from World War II. I mean, he lived through the Depression and World War II. All those Marines were skinny. Unbelievable. The pictures we see now of our SEALs and special forces, all these bulked up guys. I mean, it's amazing. And the ones otherwise too. But I'm just saying we actually have a problem of obesity in Africa now. When I grew up, everybody was starving in Africa. There was always some famine going on. Right. So I just mean, I'm thinking like even today when I was down at the court, I mean, all these people driving around these big machines, including me, and I'm just thinking it's just amazing the leisure time. I mean, my parents were working all the time. Oh, they had it pretty good though, but still, it's just amazing the material improvement that's happened, but happiness hasn't come along with it. That's my only point. Nothing wrong with material happiness. But if you're looking for that to do the whole thing, it just can't. Because again, it's our mind that's producing all of this. So once you understand that it has to do with the training of the mind, and that the mind can be trained, although it seems, because it's like trying to write in water. It's just so fluid. I mean, it's beyond fluid. But that's why it takes faith, because you have to just keep going. But below that, there aren't any waves at all. But to have that understanding first conceptually is just so important. But most, don't. What I think is the greatness. I mean, we see that here all the time because, Kempo is one who's thoroughly trained in the scriptural transmission. And so they just start out because the Tibetans have this natural kind of confidence, cultural confidence. You can jump right into it and they think, well, something's good going on. It's like me being taught to read when I was in second grade or whatever it was. I wasn't doubting the teacher. I was completely open, like, that's what we do. You have trust, they're going to do something. So your parents telling you, tie your shoes this way. Okay, I will. But then we get later and we're just thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that. And the ego gets involved. So it's very slippery stuff, but that's the radical thing. What the the Buddha said in the Lankavatara Sutra, the turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. So certainly that describes realization, but it also describes, realization on the conceptual level, where this turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness or the deepest seat of concept, you might say. So yeah, there are all these wonderful theories out there and stuff that you can read, and Nietzsche and all these people, it's all out there. But if you're doing that through the Buddhist eye, it becomes, different. And if that's going to be the whole story or somehow the core, it's always going to lead to some sort of disappointment. And that's heavy stuff. Because when people hit those disappointments, it's very destructive because they put their faith and everything into it. And that's samsara. It's up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. So to find something that's valid, but where do you get to the point where you accept it as being valid, and being sufficient, that really you don't need anything else? So someone posted some funny thing, John Pettit, who's this, I think he has either a master's degree or a doctorate, but in Buddhist studies from Columbia. And I met him a long, long time ago with Gunsan Dechen Lingpa downstate. He lives in Nepal now, but he's my age. A very interesting guy and a serious Buddhist. But he posted some funny thing, but I can't remember it all. He was saying, "This is the Western Buddhist," and he had like little like cartoon little friezes. And one was, like, I can't remember, um, completely misunderstands Buddhist concepts. When he greets people, he says namaste. For some reason, is talking about Jesus. And he had three others like that, which are pretty good. I can't remember. But it's really true, it's really true. And none of that stuff, nothing bad with any of that stuff. But if the Dharma is at the core, suddenly the whole world becomes meaningful.
Did for you, kind of thing, or it didn't happen to you? I don't need to read Carl Jung
Mhm.
anymore.
Yeah, it's and yet the understanding that comes makes all that stuff helpful. So you meet someone who's into that, you have a way because you're speaking at a deeper level, so to speak, and you can appreciate the efforts of someone who, didn't know the Dharma and yet was like because it's reality. They were discovering Dharmic principles in the midst. And so you can see that in other religions too, you know. Um, so it's like Lama Tarchin said, samsara would be very funny if it weren't for all the suffering. Those are the Greeks, comedy, tragedy. Right. Right. That's right. That's right. That's right. But I think, I again, it comes with time and experience and just all the stumbles and falling down and mistakes and all of that. But you see someone like Garba Pache, and it's just amazing to me that all of us have kind of he has stumbled into our lives. He didn't stumble in our lives, but we stumbled into this because you get this unbelievable teachings and yet simple at the same time. It's all just karma, cause and effect, and emptiness. It's all just seeing all beings as having been your mother. Think of that. That's perfect karma. And wisdom, dreamlike. So it's dreamlike. So you realize that emptiness is dreamlike, but it's not a dream, it's dreamlike. And it's really true. I mean, again, I was with a client today and I dropped my wallet and I guess I need some tape on my wallet because all my ID cards fell out. So I have an attorney ID card, a notary ID card, and a driver's license, right? And so two of them have photos on. And she picked them up and handed to me and said, I didn't look at them. I said, but it's all right. You can look at them. It's like, she looked at it and said, oh, you were younger. But I'm thinking, like, who was that guy in that photo? Where is he now? I mean, I got the whole story I can spill out to you, but I really don't. I mean, and how much of it do I remember? What did I have for breakfast 35 Sundays ago? You know what I mean? It's like we're all living in this dreamlike existence. And we're trying, you would know, and we're trying, like what is Keen saying all the time? I have a seafood diet. I see food and I eat it. Yeah. Big skinny. Is that what it's called?
Or
That's something I can Google, big skinny wallet.
yeah, or if I remembered, I could send you a link to it. But basically,
Yeah,
it's got a zipper.
that's what I need.
Zip it up.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
a carabiner. Right.
Yeah.
The carabiner probably won't work in court.
Probably. Sorry about that. Oh, that's great. So not remembering what you had 35 3 weeks ago.
35 lifetimes ago.
Because so you maybe expound on what causes the change to make us think that we're supposed to be, because because I know it's moment to moment and we're everything's coming from our current mind. So why do we make our needs more pressing? Yeah.
You could have the experience where, you know, I don't know, my own example, I had a lot of struggles with my father, you know, just a lot. Um, uh, because I felt very close to him. He didn't understand at all what I was doing. You know, this is like 1970. He literally thought I'd lost my mind. He flew with the guy that married Gretchen and me to Washington, D.C., where we were living, and took us out to dinner, and then left, somehow ditched Gretchen and got me in a hotel room. And they should have had those bright lights on, you know, like the third degree. You're a failure. You're a bad example to your brothers. What do we tell our friends? I mean, it was like, what am I doing? Interested in Buddhism. But it was before, you know, it was 12 years before the Dalai Lama won the Nobel Peace Prize. Nobody knew anything. I mean, I didn't know anything, but I had a certain kind of, I mean, for me, it was always, what was the alternative? You know, I could see how wonderful it would be to be in an outer way, but when you actually see the actual lives of like the CEO of a corporation, I mean, it's unbelievable. And our poor politicians, I mean, you know, they're popular and everything's great. And the next thing you know, everyone hates them. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, the shiftiness of it. So at any rate, for whatever reason, I could see in my own life that that wasn't going to satisfy me. You know, I didn't have any great ambitions, but I could see that no matter how high you were up, it wasn't solving the problem that was bothering me. So that made it a lot easier because when there's no alternative, it's like, I think is it who's Pema Chodron? Did she say something about, you know, no choice or something, or you know, you're not that you're at the end of your rope, but um, there's really no, yeah. I mean, I was very fortunate, but this difficulty that I had my father went on for a long period of time, you know, long period of time. But then at some point, I really felt grateful to him because I just wouldn't have been burned through as much if he hadn't been putting that kind of pressure on. I re-
Did you ever see
Oh yeah, there was even sort of resolution, but I not comparing myself, but I years later too read about the life story of Francis of Assisi, and he had a huge blow up with his father in the square where he tore off all his clothes and decided to be a beggar. It's like wow, but yeah, for my father, he was a very intelligent man, but not intellectual at all. That was part of the reason we couldn't communicate, you know. I'd throw out concepts or something. I mean, he just wasn't that way. But really, really highly moral man, good man. And uh, yeah, years later, it helped very much when we had children. Because when he had grandchildren, of course, that's such a wonderful thing for grandparents. But at the same time, he could see that the grandkids weren't like twisted and weird. They were like whatever we were doing, they were they were they were growing up well. Yeah, yeah, that was very nice. Well, wait a minute. Let me go back a second. I have to think. Gretchen's good at the dates. I'm not. But at one point, he, in the end, he actually, when we were on staff at the Zen Center, he came out to visit us and he did an introductory workshop at the Zen Center. And again, he had no sense. But first of all, he liked the place because it was clean. It looked wealthy and the landscaping was nice. And it was very Japanesey, you know. And so he knew, and he was a businessman, so he knew the effort it takes to make anything happen in this world. And so he liked that because I don't know what idea he had, but you know, so many people think it's just like hippies running around, you know, and whatever. So he could see people working hard and all of that, but he had his own karma that he didn't know about. I discovered once in a shoebox in a closet in our house I grew up in, pictures, photographs from Japan. He was in the occupation of Japan. Yeah, he was in the Marine Corps in World War II. He had a Purple Heart. He was wounded in Guam. A little bit, but he was in Okinawa. He was in some very heavy stuff, Guadalcanal, very heavy stuff. And I found these pictures of Japanese soldiers who've been run over by tanks, all sorts of stuff. And he told me about throwing prisoners of war out of airplanes or helicopters. I can't remember what they were doing. He wasn't doing that himself, but that's what was happening. Brutal stuff. And then he was in the occupation of Japan. So, but for the atomic bomb, he probably would have been killed. He was going to invade Japan. And so I found a picture of him on the terrace, the veranda of a Japanese temple. And, I'm sure he was just like tourist or something like that. Yeah. But there's no mistakes, he had that karma. And there was no mistakes that somehow he was my father. So when he came out, finally, it changed for him greatly. He didn't have any understanding, but from then on, he would send us pictures like some in the newspaper, someone was talking about Zen or something, and he would clip it out and send it to us, So that was a wonderful thing. But let's see, he died, let me think. Well, we were trying to figure out just last week when he died, I can't remember. But the girls were born, Megan was born in 82 and Tracy in 84, I think. Somebody help me. There you go. Well, thank you. Dave knows. So, right. How great is Dharma? So 82 and 8. Yeah, so he was definitely alive then. So, but I can't remember whether when they went to school. So Megan was a class of 2000, Tracy 2004. I can't remember exactly. What was that, 2000? I think so, because I think I remember saying some things to him about what was happening in Europe and, diversity, all of that. Yeah. So I'm just saying that the wonder, I think, in my own limited experience, the wonder of the Dharmic path is that you start seeing even your defeats as being good things. Because again, our true nature is totally positive, and we have to say something about it. At least we say clarity, and a step beyond that, blissful. So this is, I think, the great thing about Dharma is that it's just not that virtue is some artificial thing. In a certain way, you can look at it as that, but it's actually our true nature is positive. It's actually a positive thing. It's not just empty. If we have to put a word on it, it's good. And that's a remarkable thing. I believe that to be at the core of all the religions too. I realize that somewhere down there in the midst of all of this, there's something very positive, irrevocably positive, so to speak. But how do we get at it? I know. So that's cause and effect, right? Where are we? Right. Right. That's okay. That's okay. Right. 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 So we're on page 66 in my book, still in cause and effect. Cause and effect, the 10 non-virtuous acts, Kempo's favorite topic. The virtues and the non-virtues. Here's the introduction to it, though. After one has been convinced of the validity of the 4 aspects of karma that we were talking about before, and desires to act in accordance with that conviction, one is ready to receive teaching on the 10 non-virtuous acts. These 10 are the foundation of all spiritual development and insight, and are essential at all stages of the path. Nagarjuna, in his friendly letter, liken these basic practices of morality to the earth, the foundation of all spiritual growth. Abiding by them is like cultivating and fertilizing the rough, barren field of the mind, making it fit to produce a rich harvest. Understanding and acting in accordance with the law of cause and effect is the means of attaining inner peace and acceptance of those conditions in life which one cannot change. It enables one to relax and be calm in the face of suffering. It takes one beyond such notions as, but I don't deserve this, or why me? For example, if two people went to prison, one understanding the law of cause and effect and the other not, the latter might feel sorrow, fear, and a sense of injustice, whereas the former would remain calm, realizing that this was the result of one of his own past actions. He might even feel glad that this karma has ripened and that he thus need not experience its effects in the future. Both pleasure and pain cause followers of the Dharma to increase their efforts to abide by the law of cause and effect. When dealing with the specific aspects of karma, as opposed to the four general aspects, there are three subjects for contemplation: non-virtuous or black karma, virtuous or white karma, and the weight of both types of karma. The 10 non-virtuous or unhealthy acts, for such acts disturb one's peace of mind both in this life and the next, result in the strongest unvirtuous karma. They include 3 acts of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 of the mind. They are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harshly abusive speech, slander, and idle gossip, greed, harmful thoughts, and holding wrong views. Only by refraining from these deeds may one take rebirth as a human. In his guide to the Bodhisattva way of life, Shantideva wrote, "As a moth, while seeking happiness, flies into the flames of a candle, so do humans, while wishing for joy, ignore virtuous conduct and indulge in the 10 non-virtuous acts." In carrying out any one of these acts, there must be the object, the motivation, the action, and the completion of the act. For example, in killing an insect, there would be the insect as the object, the motivation to kill it, the act of killing, and the death of the insect as the completion of the act. If any of these 4 is lacking, the act is not complete and the karma less heavy. Okay.
Right, can you repeat those just one more time?
Mm-hmm. The 4. Yeah. Must be an object, must be motivation, must be the action itself, the act, and then the completion of the act. Got it? Yeah. So karma's less heavy. Yes. Yeah. So it says, for instance, that if our karmic slate were completely clear, and we were doing, say, a virtuous act, you saw someone, I don't know, stray cat, you formed the motivation to help that cat, you did the act of giving it water, and it drank the water and you experienced joy. If our karma was completely clear, you'd be immediately thrown into a heaven realm. Yeah. So that's called heavy karma or throwing karma. You usually think of it in the negative way. So you'd go to hell if you're doing these terrible things, heavy or throwing. But that's where the heavy is, speaking of the negative, and throwing, generally the positive, throwing you up to the heavens.
He couldn't understand that, like robbing a bank, having money, and then going to Jamaica, drinking umbrella drinks. The money was not caused by robbing the bank. that the cause was like there's no such thing as instant karma. Is there a way to describe how much time? Can you talk about?
Oh, it's very complicated, and it varies greatly. There are some, I can't remember what they're called, instantaneous kind of karmas. No, it's the heaviness of the act.
And the authenticity of a very loving nature also kind of thing, that would allow you to like instantaneously have something good for you, or
Um, yeah, I don't know. The examples I've heard are all negative things.
oh,
You know, like shedding the blood of a Buddha.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
five inexpiable
Right, that are
acts.
instantaneous. Right, okay, Yeah.
And they list them, you know, killing a bodhisattva,
right.
killing your father, killing your mother,
Wow.
causing a division in the Sangha. Those are the five inexpiable. Nothing you
Right.
can do about them. They're an immediate,
Okay.
terrible result.
Wow. Well, everyone comes
But
back
at the
to that
same
eventually.
time, you know, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome. Well,
So
thank you, Frank.
you can feel different levels of emotion, yes,
Yeah.
but this is just talking about the karmic weight of an act. You have to have those four things. That's intentionality. So, you know, you're driving down the road and you're killing all sorts of bugs in your windshield, right?
Right.
But you don't have the intention to kill those bugs. So there is negative karma though.
It's accruing, right?
Yeah. And you have to have then the intention to do that negative act. So the object, yeah, I'm going to get that one.
Right.
And then actually doing the act to completion, but then the joy.
Right.
as
The wanting
completion.
to.
He says it a little differently. He says the act and then the completion of it. So that's a little scarier even.
Yeah.
You don't feel the joy, but certainly with the joy.
Wow. That's
Heavy.
scary.
Yeah.
Okay. And Frank, I was told in many different sutra texts that all karma, all thought, all movements of the mind are creative and have consequences, and that you can't escape karma.
Uh-huh.
Do you do you believe that?
Yeah, I do. I do. I don't know where, if every single thing, but certainly every intentional thing in the mind is karma. Because again, what are we talking about? Ripples in the mind, you might think about it. You know, it's kind of like the easy pathways in the mind. We're like building up, like, I don't know, it's a bad example, I guess, but like crossing the Red Sea for the Jews, you know. You had the waves build up on either side, and there was this pathway. So when we do these things, we're like sort of building these little ripples that it makes it easier to go through or go in that direction. We naturally go from our habit. That's the power of habit. The power of meditation is that we start to see that habit. And we certainly see it. I mean, you know, like it said, for instance, you see someone's level of spiritual development when everything goes wrong. It's like on the Titanic, everything is just wonderful. This is like Deva realm, but then the starts going down, and the next thing you know, you see people panic, you see all sorts of things, and you see some people that say, "You got in the lifeboat ahead of me." So you see someone's development level when things go wrong, but you see the habitual things too. Yeah, I had once a friend, for instance, he let's see, parked. He and his wife were parked in like facing a building in like in an alley or something, and he was backing up and ran into a telephone pole that he didn't see. And his first thing was to yell at his wife. This is the power of attachment and ego, though. You know, we have this habit, and that's what we do, or blame ourselves, where, you know, we see, and that's really hard for people. They start seeing their, and again, that's why this confidence is so important. And that's why an outer Lama like Karam can be so helpful, Dalai Lama, because you see, oh, you know, they're telling you, no, I trained my mind, can be done. Lama at one point, somehow he lost in the airport or something. He had this, you know, rare text and just gone. But, you know, his reaction was, there was no anger. So anyway, that inspires. Yeah, great. She,
Yes, I don't know how to use it, and it's your fault.
There we go. I want to start with, he's got the 10 non-virtues listed here, but I thought I'd read wrong view based on what we've been saying tonight. The object of wrong views can be anything that truly exists, such as karma, rebirth, the conventional and ultimate levels of truth, the Four Noble Truths, shunyata, nirvana, and the three refuges. The worst wrong view is disbelief in the law of cause and effect, as it is the basis of all spiritual practice and attainment. The proper recognition is that one clearly knows what one disbelieves. Holding a strong desire for an object, one may form belief in accordance with or in justification of this desire, thus creating a wrong view. One might also hold a wrong view simply in order to be hostile, but the primary motivation is ignorance. For as with karma, most unknowingly people continuously collect wrong views. The act and its completion are holding a wrong view and stubbornly refusing to abandon it. Lord Buddha said, "Don't be afraid of a wild elephant, for it can destroy only your body. But if you meet heretical friends and fall in with their view, this destroys the seeds of merit accumulated in the past and hinders further development." In this teaching, the act of whatever in completion are holding a wrong view and stubbornly refusing to abandon it. You know, I thought I heard someone say today, and I think it's really true. You see all the kind of craziness that societies go through. I mean, all societies do. We know from history all sorts of, wild kind of not only panics, certainly in a negative sense, but also delusional kind of fevers, you might say. So what was it in when Europe discovered the tulip bulb? It came from Turkey, I think. And they started this market in tulip bulbs. And they started going up in value. And everybody started like putting their life saving in tulip bulbs. And there was this incredible bubble of tulip bubble mania, which of course crashed. And all these people, that's what people do, There was another one, this guy, I think his name was John Law. He was a Scot, but somehow he ended up being the finance minister of the last king of France, Louis XVI. And he had some huge, it was called the South Sea Bubble. They were starting to sell like property interest or investment rights in Tahiti. And, this huge explosion of credit. And then, of course, the whole thing fell apart. That's what we do. And we're just looking at our own, I was thinking more about COVID, but our own kind of panics that go on. And do you notice that no one ever says, it's not right and wrong. It's not saying I was right and I was wrong, but it's more, no one wants to admit that they were suckered into some belief. So we just don't go there. And if you try to go there, then it becomes this right and wrong kind of thing. And, egos are involved. It's just amazing to me how we go through as a society, all this stuff, and no one ever takes accountability. No one ever says, I was really stupid. No one really says I was wrong. I should have known better going forward. It's the nature of samsara. We're all just so many conditions, so many factors. It's like how you're raised, what immediate ego vulnerabilities there are, or the greed and attachment that people want to do, or what they have some plan, how they want to be viewed. I mean, it's just so completely complex. It made me think there's this story, I think it's apocryphal, but supposedly it's true, of who's the guy that the cigarettes are named after? Sir William Raleigh. Raleigh, was that right? William Raleigh? Yeah, so he was one of Queen Elizabeth's favorites, and well, he got in some trouble. I can't remember. So he was in the Tower of London at one time. They weren't going to cut his head off, but he had done something that pissed off somebody, and who knows. And when you were in there, if you're an aristocrat, it's like nice quarters. I mean, you had servants and things. It wasn't like ball and chain. And he had this idea. Well, I'll use the time right now, and maybe I'll write a history of the world. That's what he was going to do. and he's writing his history of the world. And one day he hears a commotion, and he goes to the window and looks out, and then in the courtyard there are a couple people fighting. And he went, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." So the next time one of the jailers came in, or somebody said, "You know, what was it that was going on?" And the guy told him a story. And then he was still curious. And the next day somebody else comes in and he asked the guy about, "Did you see that?" "Yes, I did." Told him a completely different story. So he kept trying to find out what had really happened, what the motivation was, everything. And eventually it was so complicated that he gave up writing his history of the world. You could never know these things. So there we are. There we are. And I think knowing that, this is another really direct, non-conceptual benefit of meditation. When you see your mind out of control like that, it was said about, one biographer said about the founder of Chase Bank. He was also, you might know Rogo, I can't remember. He was also the founder of not US Steel. No, that was Carnegie, right? Yeah, it wasn't him. No, it was the founder of Chase Bank. No, that was a Rockefeller. Sorry, I can't remember. Famous one in all your books, the history books, you see his picture. But at one point, at any rate, the United States government was in some sort of financial panic of 1895, I think. He bailed out the US government. This is the age of the robber barons, right? All right. Well, a biographer said of this man, tremendously powerful, obviously skilled and all this stuff. They said, it's not believed that he ever had an inner thought. So when you meditate, no, I should know. Forgive me. Yeah. Yeah, JP Morgan. It was. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was JP Morgan. Yeah, I knew the JP and I couldn't get my old brain, get the Morgan out. Maybe it was Chase Bank that he followed. David Rockefeller was big in that too. But I think he didn't found it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's the opposite of when you meditate and you see all that. But that is actual wisdom. Seeing uncontrol your mind is wisdom. The ordinary people on the street, they think they're in control of their mind. It's amazing. Sometimes they'll admit, "No, I got angry and I flipped out." But I mean, just in the ordinary way, it's like what Kempo Sharabolder said. It's like we think we're clear, right? And he says, but it's like a sunbeam coming in the window. We think the air in here is all clean and pure, but you get one sunbeam, you see dust motes dancing throughout it. So that's meditation. For the first time, you're actually looking with wisdom, with light, sunlight on your own process, and you see all of that. But the net reaction, which is not phony, is you realize others are in that situation. And so for the first time, you actually have some inner kind of bond with people outside of like strong emotions or family or nations or ethnicities or all these kinds of things. But that's remarkable because then you can do that with anybody. It's universal. It's universal. And truly, it's a little step, but you can do it with animals too. You realize we're all in this kind of state. Okay, so I've just blabbed for the whole time. Forgive me. Yeah.
Really, you were talking, I would consider, like when you first come down the stairs, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. We share the merit of this evening with all motherly sentient beings. May each and every one of them be free. May we live in a sense of gratitude for what we have received from all of those who have preceded us. And may we not stop until all are Buddhists. Okay.